All right then, so we're going to wrap things up by taking a look at Power Virtual Agents. And as part of this, we're going to first of all just discuss some of the theoretical concepts behind this, and then we'll go through an end-to-end example in terms of how we can build out a chatbot and look to integrate this alongside tools such as Power Automate flows. Okay. So initially, let's first of all just have a look in terms of what are Power Virtual Agents, what's the value behind them, and also discuss the various different concepts and essential things that you need to know about them. And as we talked about at the start of the day, Power Virtual Agents, they really are adaptable AI-based chatbots that we can build and which can serve our particular purpose. So regardless of whether we're trying to solve common customer or maybe even internal facing issues, with the main goal of freeing up staff to focus on more complex and high value interactions, they're a really essential tool for us to consider using. It's really straightforward to build out a chatbot for the very first time. So you don't need to involve developers or data scientists as part of the process. The resulting chatbot can then be integrated very easily alongside different sort of apps and services. We can look to integrate this alongside Power Automate, as we mentioned already, and also as well consume and leverage some more advanced capability in Microsoft Azure, such as Q&A framework or Microsoft Bot framework. We've also got some nice touch points and integration points into things such as Dynamics 365 Omnichannel. So we can have it so that once the chatbot has exhausted all of its capabilities or interactions with the customer, we can then automatically escalate that to a human agent, which would then appear within the user's omnichannel sort of view. So lots of different ways in which we can potentially sort of use chatbots. And we're going to move on now and just look at some of the essential sort of concepts that we need to understand as part of this. So we've already talked about a lot of this already in terms of just setting up setting the pitch for what Power Virtual Agents can do. It's worth emphasizing really that it's all about putting this in. If we can put this into the hands of our subject matter experts in the organization, this is where we're going to see the most value as part of this. And we've got some really nice monitoring capabilities that we can look as part of this. And again, this will all help us in ensuring that our chatbots are meeting and exceeding our customers' expectations each time. So when we go in and we create a chatbot for the very first time, we would look to author or maybe edit some of the out-of-the-box topics that are provided as part of that. And topics provide the discrete conversation paths that, when used with a single chatbot, allow for users to have a conversation that feels natural and flows to the appropriate sort of destination. We would look to, when we create a chatbot for the first time, author the topics that are relevant for our particular chatbot. As when we create the chatbot for the first time, we get a series of sort of templates that we can use. We're free to customize those or just refer to them to get a feel for what we can do. But typically we need to go in and maybe create a new topic. What's also quite nice as well is that we can also create topics based off any existing resources we have. So as an example, if maybe our website has got a very extensive sort of FAQ page, we can point Power Virtual Agents to that page. It will go off, it will scrape off all the content and then generate for us a set of topics based on that. Each topic will have a set of different trigger phrases. These will be sort of keywords, questions, or words that will cause the conversation to kick off. And then from there, we then define the various conversation nodes, which is what we would use to define how the chatbot should respond and what it should do. Power Virtual Agents uses natural language understanding to parse what a customer types and finds the most appropriate trigger phrase or node. So for example, a user might type open hours into the chatbot, and the AI will be able to match that to the store hours topic and begin a conversation accordingly. So as we can see on the slide on here, we get a number of different out-of-the-box topics that we can work with. And it's up to us in terms of whether we edit these or whether we just use them or ignore them for a particular chatbot. So we mentioned already the natural language capabilities or understanding capabilities that our chatbot has. And the fundamental part of ensuring this works as expected is that the natural language engine can identify the various different entities and objects that our users or customers may refer to. An entity can be best thought of as some form of information unit representing a real world subject, such as a phone number, a zip code, or even maybe a person's name. Out of the box with Power Virtual Agents, we get a series of different pre-built entities that we're free to use. And we can also go in and maybe create our own ones for where maybe there's no out-of-the-box entity that suits our particular purpose. Once we've jumped into our topic and we started to think about building out our conversation flow, this is where our actions potentially come into play. So what's quite nice about this is that we can call a Power Automate flow at any point within the flow of our conversation using the call and action node. We can look to leverage flows that have already been created in the environment, or we can maybe create a brand new one. And as part of that, go out and call different apps and services based on our specific requirements. We would typically have a series of different input and output parameters or information points that we would provide to the flow. And this will then ensure that the information can flow back and forth. And we can then respond back to the user with the appropriate information that we're getting. So to go back to my earlier example from today, query our CRM system, get the current status of an order, and then return that back to the customer. When our chatbot is finished and ready to go, we need to always make sure that we publish out the chatbot, and we need to do this any time that we make changes. And this is a really important and essential step that we need to remember, and also very ripe territory from an exam standpoint in terms of knowing that we need to do that. Once the chatbot has been published, we can look to integrate this across different platforms or channels. So maybe on our website, maybe as part of Facebook or in Microsoft Teams, in Slack, various different options there. There's also more advanced capabilities that we can configure, such as maybe integration alongside our authentication providers. So maybe we can ensure that users are logged into a website before they can use a chatbot. And publishing our chatbot will be a mandatory step before we can do any of this, as I mentioned. All right then, so let's spend some time now just looking at how we can go about and create a chatbot for the very first time. And the starting point is that we would first of all just need to ensure that we've got a subscription enabled, or that we've got a free trial in our environment. So we can use the link on the slide on here at any point in our tenant to be able to start a PVA trial, aka.ms/try-PVA. And what we'll do now is we'll just go through this process here, and we'll go off and create a very simple bot within Power Virtual Agents. So I'm just going to open up my tab like so. I'm just going to navigate to aka.ms/try-PVA. I'm going to click on the Start Free button. So I'll just log in with my details down here. And then after a few seconds, the Power Virtual Agents portal should open up for me. So I'll just leave all this information point here as defaulted. And we're just going to create a sample bot today, given how fun the weather seems to be over here in the UK and in the parts of Belgium at the moment. Let's build ourselves a nice little weather bot that can maybe give us some useful information. So take a few moments behind the scenes just to create the bot for the first time. As part of that, it's going off and creating all of those different sort of default topics and other information and our pre-built entities and various other things that our bot will sort of use and leverage. And once the bot's created, we can then jump in and start to maybe add on some topics and experiment further with it. Okay, so we can start exploring the bot. So straight away, once the bot is loaded, we get a sort of a pane here and also a test bot pane. And by default, the bot will have some pre-built topics that we can actually fire off. So I can just sort of type in something like, hi there, and the bot should respond with some pre-canned topics. I can then maybe just, do something like tell me the store hours, and it will come back to me with the responses there. I can then just give it a thumbs up if it's answered my question correctly. And just continue working with it from there. The screen just refreshed then because the bot had finished creating in the background. So at this point then we can go in and start thinking about maybe creating our first topic for this. So I click on new topic at the top. I'm just going to call this from blank. I'm going to call this my get weather info. So we always need to ensure that we add in the appropriate number of trigger phrases. Ideally, anything between sort of 5 to 10 will give us good coverage. So something like tell me the weather. What's the weather like? Is it raining? Tell me the forecast. That should probably do. Ideally, we want as many as possible, but yeah, for the purpose of this, it should do a good job of picking that up. So the first conversation node that's presented is always a message, which we can just sort of populate accordingly or just remove. So I could do something like, sure, I can help. Tell you the weather where you are right now. So to this, we need to ask some questions. So the first one would be, where do you live? What town, city you live in? And this will just be we would identify this as a entire response. If we wanted to, we can maybe select an entity, a pre-built entity down here. But for the purpose of this, we'll just go with that option there. The response will be saved as a variable. It's always recommended that we just customize the name of this to make it a bit more descriptive. So I'll just call this town city as an example. Well, next question will be, what is your postal zip code? Again, we'll just extract out the user's entire response and rename this accordingly. And then finally, let's just grab the country. And finally, what country do you live in? So again, just rename this so that it's clear what it is. We'll show a message to the user, maybe something like, give me a moment. And then here is where the fun begins. We can start calling an action out into a flow. And what we'll do here is we'll just create a completely new flow for the purposes of this demo. So we can see we get input and output options available to us. So in this case, we want to be able to put in, town, city, postal zip code, finally country. We can add in an action that in this case connects to the MSN weather service. So I just want to maybe get the forecast for today as an example. And then we want to just put in the different sort of elements of where our location is. So maybe first of all, just put in town, city, followed by a comma, postal zip code, followed by a comma, and then finally country. Then we can choose what information points we want to return back from the bot. So maybe we just want to include, for this example, maybe the forecast. So if I type that in like so. We're going into night, so let's get the night summary so we know what's happening this evening. If we wanted to, we could include additional information points, but for the purpose of this, we'll just leave it at that. Just need to give that flow a save now. And I'll just need to change its name as well, which I forgot to do. So I'll just rename this weatherbot flow, like so. And then if we jump back into here and then go to call on action again, type in that like so. They're the 3 input parameters which we can just populate with the appropriate variable values. And then we can see there's our output. And then we can just show a message to the user. The output of variables can also be put into a message, so we could do something like pasting in the entire summary. Then at that point, then we can look to end the conversation with a survey. And we'll always want to make sure we do this for any bot. Always make sure we either end the conversation with a survey or we end it by escalating it out to a human agent. With that done, we can hit the save icon at the top. Let me try that again. Okay. So with our topic created, then what we can do is actually maybe just give the bot a quick test to make sure that it's all working as we want it to. So I'll just go into here, I'll type in the message. I'll do something like, please tell me the weather where I am. It should be able to detect based on that. Yeah, so even though I've not typed exactly what's in there, it's been able to find the word weather in there, and from there infer that's exactly what I want. So in this case, just put in some details based on whereabouts I am. So I'll just put in the name of my local town, which is Buxton. I'll just put in a postcode for that area. And we'll just put in the name of the country, which will be the United Kingdom. After a few moments, it's going to trigger off the flow, which ran incredibly quickly. And we've got a nice sort of summary of the forecast over there. So tonight will be rainy. Low will be 37 during this blustery night. Temperatures near freezing. Yes, that sounds about right. I think it's still sleeting a little bit outside. So yeah, it's going to be another cold night, I think. So yeah, so at that point I can just go, yep, you've answered my question. Give it a 5-star because it's a super duper bot. And then we can just close that off from there. So I'm happy then that my topic is working as I want it to, and it's giving me the information that I want. So we can maybe proceed to think about maybe publishing this bot out for the first time. Before we do, let's just look at some of the other configuration options that we've got within here. So we can go in and see a list of all the various different pre-built entities or custom entities that we've created. For the most part, these will cover common things that typically we work with across our chatbot. So things like, age, language, speed, street address, various different things like that. I can go on and add on additional entities, which can be defined either as a list or it could be maybe some form of maybe a regular expression. So I could have maybe, an entity list to represent, bot topics. Could have on as one of these, get weather as an example. And I can then just populate this as I want it to. I can add on different synonyms based on the words and expressions to again make sure that the bot always knows exactly what to find and what to get. And smart matching is enabled by default, and this is always recommended that we leave this on because it will do a good job then of being able to match to different sort of synonyms, be able to detect things like spelling mistakes and things like that. We can view analytics for our particular bot. So at the moment, we won't see much data on here because we literally just spun this up today. What this will allow us to do is be able to see a summary of all the different sessions our bot has had with their end users. We can view information points such as customer satisfaction, a detailed breakdown of all the sessions, including the precise flow of conversation between the bot and the end user. So again, we can really sort of drill down and understand exactly what the bot's been doing. And also as well, we can view information relating to billing as well. So typically from a licensing standpoint, we are billed based on the number of sessions and have a set amount included each month. So we can use this view to keep just a bit of an eye on it all. And then finally, the most important step of all is we need to publish our bot out. So at the moment, the changes that we've made to our bot are not reflective. If I was to go onto the demo website like so, and maybe just do something like, tell me the weather, the bot is going to not recognize this as a topic and just throws me an error like that. So what we need to do first of all is just publish our bot for the very first time. Now if we refresh our demo website, tell me the weather, and we can see it's kicked off the topic, and that will work exactly how we saw a few moments ago. So the demo website gives us a nice way of just being able to maybe, internally test and make sure that our bot is working as we want it to, and give us a representative experience in terms of how it will actually work with our own customers. But more often or not, we'll need to consider just maybe setting up the appropriate channels for our bot. And we can see a list of the most common ones that we can work with over here. So as an example, if we want to maybe embed this into our custom website, we get a little sort of code snippet on here that we can use to embed that in. Likewise, if we go to Facebook, we'll get some instructions in terms of how to set up our Facebook app ID and also the page that we want to add this on. And then so on and so forth. We just configure based on the most appropriate channel that we want to work with. Finally, underneath the manage page down here, we can do things such as maybe manage details about our bot. We can set up how we want agents to be transferred into, how we want to transfer a customer from the chatbot to an agent. The most straightforward way would be to use Dynamics 365 Omnichannel, but we can also use other solutions as well with a bit more setup. We can manage various security aspects of our bot, require that users are logged in first, or maybe ensure the bot can only be embedded in certain locations, and also as well set up things such as skills. And this is where we start to get different bots connected together. So if we've got maybe a bot that's already in place that could be complementary to our existing bot, this is how I would set this up. We define what's called a skill. So as we can hopefully see and appreciate, a lot of really nice capability on here, and it's taken us less than probably 15 minutes to actually create a bot that's doing something that may be of potential use to us. It's really not too hard at all to go in and create this stuff. So as I say, if we can drive, if we can put this into the hands of the people who know their processes inside and out, then they can drive a lot of value with this and build out a solution that's fit for purpose as a consequence. So before we move on, any questions then?
Yes, I'm sorry, I have a couple of questions, tiny ones.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
So skills, are those like the same as skills in Alexa, and topics are more or less the same as intents in other platforms, or is there a difference?
I'm not too familiar with how Alexa works, but yeah, skills are where we're wanting to get two bots talking to each other, so you can pass off a conversation and use the same bot over there. And yeah, topics are the things that effectively initiate a conversation flow, if that helps explain it.
Yeah, sure. And are there any front-end possibilities? Like, for example, like there are quick buttons. Can you also arrange the quick buttons that they're not next to each other, but underneath each other, or are those quite limited?
So in terms of like changing the send button and what we see down here, do you mean?
Yeah, sometimes you have like several options, and then you can like have some buttons like, would you like this, or that on your fries, for example, like mayo, ketchup, whatever. Can you also arrange that? Or for example, an image carousel, or
Yeah, so you can, so what you would do is, if I just show you on here quickly, let me just edit this. Hang on. Sorry, I'm getting into a bit of a mess here. Let's try again. Details. Let me edit it. I know I can. So what you would do, so as an example down here, if I delete this one, you can ask a question to the user, and then if you wanted to show options that they can select, then you create a custom entity down here with the options that you want to present, and then the user would then see those as prompts, just sort of below there, that they can then select, obviously get to the next step.
Okay.
And we can also have multiple choice options as well, so we can have it so that, yeah, so do you want ketchup on your fries, do you want salad cream, things like that. Or if you're a true heretic in these parts, you could have gravy on your chips. I don't know why you would. And yeah, so on and so forth. And then that's what would appear to the user.
Okay.
So let me just return that to how it was and save. Okay.
And perhaps the final question,
Yeah,
like
sure.
there were some bot analytics. Is that also linked to Power BI? I mean, can you visualize it with Power BI, or is that something entirely different? I'm sorry, I'm like not familiar with Power BI, but
Yeah, so it's using Power BI visuals, but at the moment, I don't believe we can actually extract it out into our own Power BI reports. What we'd have to do is we'd have to go into this view here, and through here we can then, I think the best we can do at the moment is just we can download an extract of all the sessions as a CSV. This file will probably be empty, but let's have a quick look. Okay, so we can see there's the conversation flows from a few moments ago.
Okay. All right. Okay, thanks.
No problems. Okay, so let's just wrap up on a few things then. Yep, so as we saw, we'd need to go in and create a bot, and it's really up to us in terms of how many bots are going to be needed for a particular scenario. We can also, edit any existing bots and also delete a bot if we no longer need it. It's entirely up to us. As we saw, we would need to go in and create the various different topics. So in our example demo, we just created a very simple topic. This was going to go off and just get the weather forecast. But typically we'd want to ensure that we've got as many different diverse topics as possible based on our scenario, and also as well that we include on the relevant number of trigger phrases to ensure we get good coverage and that we don't cause any frustration for our customers. Each topic will have a conversation path that we need to define out, and we've got various different things that we can do here. We can ask questions, we can display messages, we can call a Power Automate flow, we can maybe redirect the user to another topic if it's going to be more appropriate to do so, branch out into different sort of paths for the conversation, and then finally, and most importantly, for any topic, we need to close down the conversation, either by just asking the user to provide feedback on the session or redirecting them to a human agent. And as we saw, we can quickly and easily just add and remove nodes in our conversation path at any time. It's very quick and easy just to test a bot at any point. We can just open the testing pane, and again, we can get that real-time assurance that what we're creating is fit for purpose. All we just need to do is just enter the appropriate trigger phrase, and we can see on the right hand side of the screen, which path and which current sort of question or node that we're on. As part of that, we can also test how things flow between different topics, and all we need to do is just make sure that radio button at the top has been enabled, and that we'll do that as part of our testing session. And then finally, and most importantly, publishing needs to be done as a minimum step before we can start configuring this for different sort of channels. So always make sure we do that step first, and then we're free to then get this embedded into our desired location. And we've got a few different options available to us, as we can see. And then finally, as we touched upon, this is the Analyze or Analytics tab is where we go just to understand what's going on with our bot. And we get some nice different sort of information points over here that we can sort of see. And again, it's really important that we check this regularly. You know, the idea behind these solutions is that we are driving customer satisfaction and retention. If the bot is just causing frustration and annoyance to our end customers, then it's not really suiting its purpose. So we need to be really on top of that. And we can use this not only to understand what our bot is how our bot is getting on, but also just to make sure that from a bidding standpoint that we're not going over or potentially breaking the bank from a consumption standpoint. So yeah, so that really just is the end-to-end step-by-step process that we saw in the demo that we need to follow when we're working with Power Virtual Agents for the first time. So it's really important that we're clear on that process. We know what those steps are. Certainly as well for the exam as well, knowing the difference between the different things that we mentioned, things like our topics, things like our entities. It's going to be really important that we know all about that and that we're able to be in a position to describe that in an exam question scenario. But hopefully you agree, some pretty interesting and pretty powerful capability over here. All right. Any questions then on Power Virtual Agents then before we actually close off and look at the exam itself? Okay. So we've got just under 10 minutes before we start to wrap things up for today's session. I just wanted to spend some time just talking through the exam itself, you know, what to expect and, you know, the types of things to look out for if you are looking to prepare and take this in the future. So at this point, I'm just going to open up my web browser. I'm going to take a look at the exam page itself. I'll put this in the chat as well, so if you wanted to follow along, you can do. If you give me a moment. Always helps to have the right window open, so there you go. Yeah, so the fundamentals exam, you know, this is our entry level exam when it comes to the Power Platform. The very first thing, if we're just maybe just curious or we're just starting on our journey, this is the exam that we're going to want to go for. So from a difficulty standpoint, you know, compared to some of the other exams, the bar isn't going to be too high. But given that it is an exam, it's going to be really important that we do at least, you know, do some studying and have a good grasp of the different concepts before we set it for the first time. So the important thing to always look at for any Microsoft exam is this area down here known as the skills measured. Okay, and we can download this at any time by clicking the link. And what the skills measured provides us with is a breakdown of all the various topics that are covered on the exam. Everything that you see in this document will be stuff where you will potentially get one or several questions on the topic. So it's really important that we spend some time reading through this and just understanding exactly what we're going to be assessed on. And we can see that it covers a lot of the type of things that we've been through as part of today's session. You know, things like that, things that we mentioned in passing, such as the data loss prevention policies, things that we saw in practice, such as the common data model, various different things on here that we need to grapple with. Now, when it comes to each sort of category, it's always important to look at the weightings. The weightings here will give us an indication in terms of how many questions there will be. The higher the weighting means the increased likelihood of more questions appearing. For this particular exam, it's fairly consistent across the board. It's 15-20% for each topic area, apart from Power Virtual Agents, which is just slightly smaller. So what you can take and read from that is that, you know, although it's going to be important that we know about Power Virtual Agents, perhaps spending the most amount of time on these other topics will be most appropriate, because that's where we're going to get most of our questions through. So Always make sure you download and have a look at this for any exam, whether this is your first one, whether this is going to be or in the future for any other exam, and use this as a bit of an aid for you to figure out, okay, what areas do I need to go away and look at? You know, so it could be that, yeah, okay, I'm pretty confident on the common data model. Oh, but what's this stuff AI builder here? I've got no idea what this stuff is on here. So that's then the prompt then for us to go away and actually start to look at that in a bit more detail. Also, as well, if there's any upcoming changes or changes that have been made to the exam, these will always appear in this skills measured document. Last time this exam was updated was last year. And I don't think there's any changes planned to this particular one, but it's always worth just checking that. From a preparation standpoint, obviously we've been through a lot of stuff today. It's obviously a one-day session. You know, we can't really sort of go into super duper detail around all of this stuff. So the recommended thing to do is at the bottom you'll see you've got a dedicated learning path available for the Power Platform Fundamentals exam. So this provides a series of different sort of modules that we can sort of work through to cover off all of the topics that we need to know. What's quite nice about this is that we can sign in using our sort of Microsoft Learn account or any sort of live ID. And then from there, we can track our progress against each individual module. And the modules generally follow a sort of broadly similar sort of format. You'll have like an introduction section. It'll go into some detail around the different sort of concepts. Sometimes there'll be demonstrations that we can follow through ourselves. So in this case, we can actually create and build a little site tracking app, which is quite nice. And then if we just skip ahead right to the end, what we also get as part of this is knowledge checks. So as we're completing each module, we can just get that assurance that we know what we're talking about. We know that the topics are sort of sinking in. And gauge our potential sort of readiness to sit the exam in future. So I cannot recommend this sort of content enough. It's really going to hold you in very good stead when it comes to the exam. So if you are planning to sit the exam in the future, please do go through these learning paths, follow through them, and use them as your tool of being able to best prepare for the exam. Final thing to mention, which I'll just before I just throw out to questions more generally about the exam itself, we now also Microsoft now also give out sample questions for each for some exams, and this exam is no exception here. So we can download a sort of full sort of guide that we can use to get a feel for the type of things that may be on the exam itself. As stated, this is not a one-for-one list. This isn't going to be the exact same questions that you see in the exam, nor is it a representative a representation of the length of the exam or its complexity, but certainly it can start to get you into the sort of mindset and to start thinking about, okay, well, what are my weakest areas and what are the areas where I'm feeling pretty strong and feeling pretty confident. So lots of things that we can look at with the exam to help as part of our preparation. So just to recap again, check the skills measured for the topics, subscribe to the learning path and work through the different modules, and then finally take a look at the sample questions, and from there you'll be able to get a feel for what's going to be covered on the exam itself. All right. So any questions then just on the exam before I just wrap up with a few bits? No? Okay. So final things just to mention then, we've got the Power Platform Fundamentals will be the start of our journey when it comes to Power Platform certification. From there, we can then look to go out and expand our knowledge a bit further. So next level from there, we'll be looking at one of the different associate level exams that we can see up here. The difficulty at this level starts to ramp on a bit. It's really expected at this point that we've spent a bit of time getting hands-on and actually working with the platform in depth. And we can choose to specialize either as an app maker or as a functional consultant or developer or as a data analyst. It's worth noting that this exam is going to be changing. There's going to be a new replacement exam for this in the near future. Just keep an eye out for that. And then finally, if you want the nice big shiny title of solution architect, then you can also sit the PL-600 exam. But then this is our tip top. You need to sort of know the platform inside and out. This exam as well is also quite sort of challenging in various different areas. Took me my second attempt in the end to get it due to some rather rookie naive mistakes. So don't underestimate any of these exams at this level. PL-900 will be considerably easier, but it's generally but you do need to prepare. So plan accordingly. And the good news is if you do manage to pass this, then you will get a nice shiny certification and a badge at the back end of it. And then from there, you can then sort of promote that on LinkedIn. You can add it onto your different sort of social media profiles. And it obviously just then gives you a bit of an edge in, potentially from a career development standpoint, and also as well in being able to just sort of validate that, yes, you know this platform and you're able to, and you've started your journey. So hopefully, something a bit more sort of 2 additional certifications in the future. In terms of booking the exam itself very quickly, so we do this by going down to and selecting the schedule with Pearson View option down here. The key thing as part of this is that we need to ensure that we've got an account set up already, a Microsoft account set up. With that done, we will then be taken out to the Pearson View website. We can then look to book our exam either sort of at a test center, if it's indeed open and available for where you're based, or, and this is the most common option these days, we can schedule and sit the exam at home. And there's various different steps you need to go through on the Pearson View website. Follow through all of that, get your exam booked, and then from there you'll then be able to take the exam at the sort of date and time if you're choosing. All right, so with that then, we are at the end of today. So before I just wrap up with a few final bits in terms of housekeeping, any final questions, anything anyone wants to ask regarding the Power Platform or the exam itself? Thank you, DS.
I would say we have only 3 minutes left, so I need to close down the bootcamp. So no, go ahead, Joe. I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No problem, Clifton. Yeah, I was literally just about to wrap up with this with the stuff. Yeah, so it's final just request from ourselves. It's really important that we get feedback for today for all the different sort of sessions. So if you can spend just a few moments just completing the feedback survey, it's really beneficial for both the organisers and also for the speakers as well. What you liked, what you didn't like, and also how we can sort of improve in the future. So we really would appreciate your time and attention on that in terms of filling that out. This has been the Power Platform sort of global bootcamp, but there's also this specific event has been organised by the Belgian Power Platform community. So they run events fairly regularly, mainly sort of virtual at the moment. So please do check out poweraddicts.be site. Check out all the great work that Clifton and the fellow organisers today are doing. It's a really great community, and I'm sure there'll be events and sessions in the future that you can go to and you can use. And all it leaves me to say is thank you very much. I hope you found today's session very useful. The session has been recorded and will be available on demand, so please do check the link on the poweraddicts.be website. And I'm just looking at the chat now. I will put in a link to the feedback forms as requested, if you give me just 2 moments.
Or we will do it, because in the wrap-up we will say it once again, so it's for all sessions, not only your session. Yeah.
Thank you, Clifton. Okay, well, that's it for me, so I'll hand over to you then, Clifton.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Thanks for. Okay, I see Frederick already did it. Yes. Okay. So we will close this down. For those who will be in the lobby or what you also call the break room, see you there, because there we will do the closure in like 1 minute. So I will close this down. Switching over to the other room. Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone.
And
Have a great
thanks
day.
again, Joe, for doing this. Yes.
Thanks, you.
Goodbye.